Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. And as you can see, I have a new guest this week on the podcast. Niko is joining, fresh from San Francisco, the Bay Area, and now local to where I am in Phoenix. So this is going to be fun to chat. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Awesome to be here.
Cool. So what I like to start with is obviously you and I have met over the years in the electronic dance music scene, primarily in trance music. But where did you when did you fall in love with music? What was your background? Did you grow up with the music or did you find it? Because I found it. I grew up with other music, but how did you start in music and your background?
Well, I definitely didn't grow up with it. I grew up listening to like rock, country, like classic rock, alternative rock. And then in high school, like I still liked all of that, but I was into metal, rap, um, reggae, and was it a year or two after high school? A buddy of mine offered to take me to a rave, and never been to one, didn't know what to expect. But I'm like, all right, let's check it out. And this was like 2007. I saw Infected Mushroom, and that was like a perfect way to bridge the gap between liking rock, and then fused with psytrance. I'm like, oh, what is this? And then from there, discovered trance. But before that, you kind of discover. I mean, you hear like Tiesto and like all the main folks, but I was into Benny Benassi like his early days, and a lot of Fed Legrand. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff, like Christopher Lawrence. Of course, Cascade and a lot of those names. But it only took me, I'd say, about 6 months before I was hooked on trance. That was really what it was. I was sucked in, and then it was the rave was Pop 2007, and then the 2008 version. I saw it was Tiesto, Ferry Corsten, Marcus Schultz. Uh, I'm trying to remember if who else was there, but they all played 2 hour sets at a festival, which you don't really hear anymore. And that was just a amazing experience. And then Love Fest, a few months later, was well, I guess I went to Love Fest prior to that. Saw Sasha, and Ferry Corsten. But then the following Love Fest was at 2008. It was Armin, Above and Beyond, uh, Caillou and Albert, ATB, and we're talking like Ocean Lab, Tri-State, kind of like old school Above and Beyond kind of feeling. Like not hating on their new stuff, but there's a certain
The
era
old
that I'm
school, my
like
favorite.
like Imagine, like
Yeah.
Armin, like when that album came out. Um, ATB was just really good. Caillou and Albert, that was like when the 6 a.m. Caillou and Albert remix of like Cressida was out, like those, that time. And so the event ended at 4 a.m. And I was just so blown away that Monday I went and bought decks and decided I want to do this. So it took me probably about a little over a year before I'm like, yep, this is what I'm doing.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a journey. I loved Benny Benassi as well. I mean, that album with Satisfaction, the track came out, was like a soundtrack of mine. So yeah, I grew up on a kind of the
Yeah,
same.
I bought that album too, definitely.
Yeah, and I had that on repeat back in the day. Like
Yep.
there was some just that entire album was just it was great to work out too. Like I
Oh
used to be
yeah.
in the gym a lot to that album.
I think I played it too much because certain
Yeah,
songs stopped working.
yeah, pretty much. So I guess well, I most people who have listened are more aware that I started in like the late '90s is when I like became aware of this music. But like it's been a journey. But some of the same artists, yeah, like of course Armin, Above and Beyond, and I prefer like the older Above and Beyond than the new. Not hating on the evolution, but
Mhm.
I agree that like if people go back and listen to Ocean Lab or Tri-State of Above and Beyond, that is still classic.
Yeah, we're
And
just
obviously, like,
talking old school trance. That's really what it is. I mean, I remember was in high school when Alice DJ Better Off Alone was out, and I was very close minded at the time, like, oh, this is horrible. But now I actually really like it. So it's just funny how that goes. But I was probably listening to many other people's opinions too. I think of like what you're supposed to listen to and like what school. But now everyone loves electronic music, and that's like what you're supposed to be listening to. It's like the opposite now. But
it
it's
depends on who you talk to.
that's true.
Because
Yeah.
if you could go down a rabbit hole of talking to people that are like specific purists, and then there's elitists, so those camps kind of clash.
Hmm.
That's a whole nother conversation. But
Right.
yeah, so what was it about your first rave and listening to that music that grabbed your attention to the point that you decided you wanted to DJ and produce yourself? Because it was kind of a really quick transition from like,
Yeah.
oh,
Just
I'm falling in love with this music, but then I want to pursue it as a passion.
it was just the feeling that I had being in the crowd and on the dance floor. To be honest with you, that was really it. Like it's the melodies, it's the rhythms, like it's the groove. It's just the feeling or the journey you get, as you know, as everyone says. But it's true. I mean, like um, there's a story with every DJ set, and how DJs can build it. I mean, I kind of like make the joke that. Love Fest 2008 ended at 4, but I was still dancing till like 6 or 7, just because like it was I was hanging out with friends, and it was just I was that in awe. It was just that amazing, and I couldn't stop talking about it just because like you hear I got hooked onto the music real fast. So like I tried to like I had a friend of mine who really like would show me like where to find all the music, like all the track names, and just I kind of nerded out on that like really fast, just because I found it fascinating, and I just there was just a spark where just a passion to where it was just like, all right, like I just want to keep learning this, and there's ups and downs with everything in life, and when you learn something, you're gonna have growing pains, and this has probably been something that has been one of the most rewarding things in my life, just because um, it producing music is hard, and there's no shortcuts to it. Like you have to put in the time. There's no shortcuts at all. Now, granted, you can learn information sooner than others but at the same time, you still have to put in the effort to learn this information and find it, to try to take those next steps and grow. So, and there's a lot more information out there now than there was before. But a lot of people from around the time I started learning, there wasn't as many production classes out there. There wasn't as many tools to learn how to DJ. The DJ equipment out there then wasn't as cool as it is now. Like I remember like burning countless CDs before I would go play a rave, and that's like a lot of effort. Just you're bringing your CD binder. I didn't play in the vinyl days. I was like a little bit after that, but I mean, I still learned how to DJ at on vinyl, like at home. But it was just an awkward CD stage when I started. But with that being said, though, like I remember playing at a warehouse, and the equipment was just like, I don't even know what it was, but it was like the hardest to figure out because it was just not what like is like standard. We'll just say that. But then you learn on the fly, and you're playing at a warehouse. You're playing at a warehouse. This isn't like a club. This isn't a festival. So I mean, like those old experiences, like I'll always treasure because you learn a lot from that. Like you don't got anyone to like hold your hand. You don't got like the top of the line stuff in front of you to where like it's really hard to get something wrong. You really got to be on top of your stuff. But it's just fun, right? I get nostalgic. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it before with other guests. Like the difference between festivals and raves and how I've been trying not to be the like get off my lawn kind of like back in my day, but like it's different when you either experience like what a rave is or you're aware from seeing like documentaries or old footage and how different it is like going to EDC or these big festivals across the world or Tomorrowland where the primary focus is the DJ, but back in the day it was the music in the party,
Yep.
which is probably why I mean you played this last year on the Groove Cruise, which has turned into one of my favorite things on the planet. And that kind of resembles that old school. Yeah, there's like different venues on the ship, but it's that idea of like you follow the music, you follow where you're having fun, meeting people. People play multiple sets, so you don't feel obligated like I have to be at this stage the whole time. Like
Yeah.
you can wander. So I guess my question is like since you've experienced it all, what do you find the most enjoyable? Like the idea of maybe it coming back around certain events, or just people are deciding to go to smaller underground places like back in the day. It's like coming around. You know what I mean? Like in certain cities.
I mean, I don't know if I have a preference, but because I think everything could be special in its own way. For example, like at Groove Cruise, like that, it did have that old school vibe. That was my first Groove Cruise, and you know, I could just tell it. Like I was on one of the nights I was closing, I ended up like playing longer just because like the stage was like everyone was just grooving, like they're hanging out with their friends, they were listening to music, they were talking, they were enjoying themselves, and it just had this like old rave feel to it. Except you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, which is, I mean, not a boat, but I mean like
Yeah.
it's but I mean like it was just man, it was just surreal, and like I got to play two sets, which was cool. So it was like one of like my modern stuff and one and like I went like full on classics like trance energy classics on another one and it, that was a really old school feeling. So I mean it was just like you can really just be creative and just play what you want and everyone just was having a good time, really good vibes. um, at the same time, like old school stuff like that I love, but if I want to play like for example like Academy LA, I love that venue so much. Like the production, like the booth, everything is just so on point. And you have that huge LED wall, and you got like a big crowd in front of you, and it's just the experience there. I love too. Obviously, playing festivals, like um, I mean, it's really everything kind of has its place, right? Like, so I got to play as NZ, my like progressive house alias, before Factor B and Craig Connolly. It was kind of like one more warm up set before I leave the Bay Area and move to Phoenix. And everyone got there early. It was great, but I mean, it's just that whole dark room, opening up a club proper, trying to really like set the mood, as opposed to like, all right, I'm closing, I'm just going to give you all my energy and just send you off like as with as high energy as I can. So I mean, like there's a time and place for everything. So I don't really necessarily have a favorite, but I would say that if I haven't done something in a while, I'll probably really want to do that just because I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just funny because you hear, I guess it depends on who you talk to in
I
the
just want the
scene.
crowd to be passionate. That's the biggest thing for me. Like if the crowd's passionate and into it, doesn't really matter what. Like for example, like when I played Dream State Mexico, that was like the most passionate crowd like I've ever seen. That was just, they just like latched on to every track I played to the story that I was trying to put out. It was just like, man, like and also I would say like right when clubs reopened after COVID, that was a special vibe. Nobody was on their phone. Like everyone's just focused on hanging on being on the dance floor, hanging out with their friends, listening to the music, like enjoying the experience, right? Like that's what it should be. Now, Granted, I'm not trying to hate on anyone, taking videos of your phone. I do that all the time. I have to, but also I like remembering stuff too. But sometimes just put it away and enjoy it, because you're not going to get some of these nights. Actually, you're not going to get any night ever again. Every night is different. But that's kind of like the old school mentality that I do like. There's this picture of like the first rave I ever played, of the crowd, and no one's looking at the booth. Everyone's just looking left and right, just kind of dancing, and no one's got their phone out. You know what I mean? And but still, everyone came up to me afterwards and told me, "Hey, man, like I loved your set, this and that." And I don't know if you ever seen the movie Groove, um, like old school rave movie, but like there's it's got like John Digweed in it. It's based off the Bay
Yeah,
Area.
I
Yeah,
did see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this like scene at the end, and their party gets shut down by police. They keep trying to find different places. They find a place, and then this one guy asks the promoter at the end. He's like, "Man, why do you do this? Like, why do you risk like getting in trouble, etc." He's like, "For the nod." He's like, "What do you mean the nod?" He's like, "When someone thanks you for what you did, and then they just nod." Like, thank you for this experience, etc. And then they nod, and then you nod back, and I'm just like, oh man, I know it's some people might find it cheesy, but to be honest with you, that is literally like what it's all about.
Agreed. The vibes for me.
Yep.
And I, especially in this last couple years, going to events, I'll take a photo or a video here or there. Oh, I try. I mean, depending on the event. But I've been trying to live in the moment myself more because even though like I do this podcast and I'm aware of things, I'm in the scene, like I just want to enjoy it myself because I love the music. The music is the first thing for me. So I feel that vibe. And I think I felt that right after COVID too, and things started opening up and people got back to it. The appreciation was there. But and to go back to what you said, out of all the clubs in LA, I've never been to Academy. I've been to Exchange and I've been to Avalon too many times because I see Margaret Schultz there pretty much all the time. Um, but that's what people say about they either have a favorite in LA, between either Exchange or Academy. Now, I haven't been to Academy to know the difference. Um, I also just to feel it feels like people like the club based on the crowd of that event. So that whenever people are e- explaining why they don't like one of those venues, it's usually because of the crowd, not anything that the DJ or whoever they're there to see did.
I
But
mean,
that's also like an LA thing because I remember finally got to get to Ruby Sky in San Francisco before it shut down, which was a famous club, as you will
yeah,
know.
yeah. I work
And
there.
yeah, and so the difference in venues can also be make or break like a show. Like talk about like I it's hard for me. I have a hard time explaining Ruby Sky to people because it's no
Hmm.
longer open. But somebody that explain to those maybe who are listening or watching this what the specific way that venue just did things right.
I mean, there's like a rich history of electronic music in San Francisco. We're talking about like since like '90s, maybe even prior to that. Um, and if you want to talk about like clubs that people got their like US debuts in were like 1015 Folsom and Ruby Sky. Um, Ruby Sky opened, I mean, and you'd have like iconic things where after, um, was it Pop 2008, I think it was, Tiesto was playing and the power went out like halfway through his set. Barry Corson also played, and to keep the party going, they played back to back for like I don't know how many hours. Ruby Sky afterwards. Ruby Sky would when Marcus Schultz would play there and open a close, he'd play like 9 to 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be like 9 hours, and you go out and the sun's up, and it was just crazy. It was an old theater, and the production always got better over time too. Um, eventually, um, it just kind of seemed like they weren't really putting as much money into it and looking to sell. Which, I mean, I guess it's there now, but it's like a weird non-electronic music venue. Like, I don't even know the artists. I'm not going to even try to explain it, but like it was just iconic. Like the things that you got there. Like I remember the first event that I threw there under my Foria brand was with Elon Bluestone and Jerome Ismae, and we sold it out. And Cosmic Gate was playing across the bay, I think in Oakland at the Fox Theater, and and Bossy came afterwards, and I think he played like a track or two with them, kind of thing. And it was just like the place to be. If you were going out to hear trance or not just trance, like electronic music, like that was the spot to go. Everyone wanted to go there. A lot of people went, even if it wasn't necessarily, their favorite genre, just because like there's this community where your friends are going to be there, and it was really special for a really long time. For a good, I would say, 15 years. It was like really solid, and yeah, it just built a rich history in San Francisco. Now you have the Midway in SF, which is like it's bigger, but it's also more versatile. So I mean, like they throw block parties there now, like next to the venue on the street. Their main room holds like I think it's 2,500 people, but they have like side rooms that can throw like smaller events. It's kind of where a lot of people have actually gone since then. Dream State has been doing intimate club nights at like Public Works, so that's kind of like where it's evolved. We kind of didn't really know what was going to happen once Ruby Sky closed. We kind of had to figure stuff out. There was Audio and Halcyon. Both those venues are still there. They had a cool trance run for a bit, but it's just not really a premier trance venues as much anymore. Occasionally they do, but it's just not a regular thing as much anymore. So it's really interesting. I mean, trance is always going to keep evolving in San Francisco. I think COVID kind of affected everybody for a little bit, but it's that was like a home base. So it was like it's really hard to find that back. It takes time to build something like that. It's not just, oh my God, here's a new venue and it's our home base, and all my friends are always going to be here. So, um, but that was, I mean, I started DJing there as a resident in like 2011. Played with a lot of artists like in their SF debuts, like I don't know, Artie, Sebastian Brandt, Elon Bluestone, Jordan Suckley, Ben Nicky, Indecent Noise, John Askew. There was a lot of names that we brought for like the first time there, and even at Slide, which is like the smaller venue right underneath it, like its sister club. So if we wanted like a 200-300 person party versus like an 1,000-1,200 person party, but I mean we had some really good times there. It closing may have been a blessing in disguise for me because I was able to put the promoter thing aside and just focus on producing and DJing. Um, I still help out where I can, but it's that part of my musical career is it's completed. That was a fun chapter, but now I'm just focused on producing, DJing, and eventually I've been working on starting a label, but I'm just building it and working on the right timing for it. So it's just that's where my heart is. And I'm still down to help out. Like you'll see me running around at festivals sometimes, still helping out artists if I'm not playing, and I still love doing it. But it just can't be my main focus like it was when I was there. So that was like I think it was a good like 5 year run of like the promoter life for me.
Yeah, well, as we kind of talked weeks ago, um, Phoenix has been a journey. The thing is that it's not a trance. Arizona's not like a trance place. It really isn't. I mean, we get trance, we push for trance, but it's a house techno before trance. And then even before those genres, you have like drum and bass and hardstyle and all the other ones that come in. And the promoters here, we only for a while only had one or two promoters, but more than likely it was just one. And now it's expanding and there's more options, there's more venues. And we're starting to see a lot now, but this wasn't always the case. Um, of like because there's more promoters now there's competition, so now they're willing to book more. It used to be like really hard to get trance here. Like as we talked this year, it was really weird to see Marcus Schultz twice here in Phoenix. Like he usually skips every other year, and even though he started in Phoenix, took a break because the market wasn't really here. And I've talked to him about San Francisco changing for him as well because of Ruby Sky closing, the venues changing. So it's funny because it's like, I feel like you have the older folks in the scene who are okay with changing or deciding, they're now deciding where they want to play. But then you still have the up and comers and the people that want to see different venues in different cities. As a promoter and as now as a DJ yourself and producer, what do you see as like the balance? Because the music, in my opinion, has to come first, but it's obviously the business is really at the forefront.
Um, I mean, as long as the community's there and you bring good talent, like as far as music goes, that really attracts people attention. I feel like you can build something special. As far as like trance goes, um, for the promoters who are afraid to book trance, we'll just call it melodic techno, and it's fine. I'm just kidding.
That's how I mean. That's what's happening. Like it's truly people don't want to say the word trans. Like
They just like they just
the
like they just like slow trance. They just don't know it. Like
well, it's funny. Like
Lane 8 Yotto, that's all slow trance, right? Like
yeah,
it's progressive house, it's melodic, I get it. But a lot of it really is still trance too. It's just I could rant on this forever. It was funny. I was at EDC and one artist, I won't say who, but he's like, Niko, what's really popular like in the US right now? And I'm like, I said like progressive house, like in Juna Deep, and just like the whole like Ben Bomer, Lane 8, etc. And he's like, oh, so just slow trance. I'm like, yeah, that's just it. And I just lost it. I was dying laughing just because I love that stuff too. Don't get me wrong. Like that's why I started that progressive alias just because those sounds like, and like I'm a huge Guy J fan, so I mean like I love it. Now, if you're not going to sit here and say Guy J is slow trance, even though there probably is some songs you might be able to argue. But like, I think that trance is so old school that like sometimes people get like skittish about it, I guess, which is weird. But ultimately, if like I said, the community is there and the room is something that people can enjoy. Um, like I know a lot of people were kind of skeptic on public works in San Francisco being a spot where Dream State was like throwing events, just as far as like talking to people in the community, just because it was such an old venue. But like they did these things to upgrade the venue, and the sound is good, and they've built the community came back, and people are there, like it's packed, like people are partying, enjoying it, and you like see a bunch of people having a good time in like the smoking section. You know what I mean? They're taking a break, but everyone's just social, having a good time with their friends. Like, and of course, like if people are like on the dance floor, like passionate about the tracks being played, um, you can make anything work as long as you got proper sound, proper DJs, a proper room, and that venue is super cool. Like I love playing it. I just didn't know what to expect at first, just because like it's a smaller, I would say like 500-600 person venue, versus let's say Ruby Sky, which is like 1,000, 1,200, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, So as long as you got a good space with a good experience, if you build it, people will come, as they say.
Yeah, it's just interesting because from a promoter, like knowing yourself, it's just that's a lot of work. A lot of people don't realize kind of the behind the scenes and what goes into being a promoter.
Hmm.
So I understand the difficulties. I just think it's funny how, because of the work, you might see promoters not willing to book certain artists
Oh
because
yeah,
they're assuming that they're not going to sell.
yeah. It's a tough call. At the same time, it's like, what's the balance of trying to bring new names into the market? Like what? Well, if you have to take a chance on somebody to build that name, and build the future for the scene, you can't just keep relying on the same people to build the trance scene. Luckily, you do have heavy hitters that do that, but at the same time, like there is a new wave of trance, definitely. But I would like to see it be a little bit stronger. It's definitely complicated for sure. As far as that's kind of why I got out of promoting events, just because it was so much like, well, I wanted to do this, but the club didn't want to do it, and that wasn't what I was like passionate about. And um, at the same time, though, I felt like it was easier to fill a room with new names, just because that was like something that I was doing. Like I had a debut every like 2 3 weeks, and everyone's like, "Oh, I never seen this person like live." So that was like a big pull. And not really many people who haven't actually played out at certain cities or the U.S. kind of thing anymore. And I also think that there was a little bit of time there where people weren't really pushing themselves in the studio as hard as they could have, and people were kind of being a little bit generic with trance. And I think the genre and in the scene suffered a little bit, but I also think that depends where you look. There's people that are absolutely killing it, and they probably don't get as much exposure as they should. But I also think that with time, eventually people will notice if you're good, and it'll catch on. Like I said earlier, if you build it, they will come, and you just have to have that mindset, network, and believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one is going to believe in you. Well, they might, but I mean, if they see you don't, they're not going to believe in you
Yeah.
as much. So
Well, I thought, like, after we were a few months into like lockdowns and COVID, and everybody and their brother started a Twitch channel and all of that, which was cool. I thought we were going to get a lot more people also in the studio just producing. And what I've seen is that people just went back into booking gigs outside. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of people on Twitch daily. But even as a viewer myself, um, I found myself not as much on Twitch uh, supporting as much because it was just so much for during COVID. Like I was on it like every day. Finding it was great finding new people, and some of these people I knew on Twitch, and then they play on Groove Crew, so it's been great to see them do that. But I don't know, it's just interesting that the music, like you mentioned, is not hasn't been people weren't really focusing on that, or it was because of the nature of the beast of like producing. You like people don't make as many albums. It's like I just got to get this track out. I got to get this EP out. I gotta that they're not
part
putting
of
that
part of
much
it was
effort.
like there was like right when lockdown started, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have all this time for producing. That's amazing. But then like 6 months came down, 6 months happened, and you don't have live events to inspire you, and that's like a really big thing. Like going out and like hearing things live, like that is a huge inspiration. Like, yes, you can like listen to old music, get inspired, and build that inspiration for yourself. But that experience of like actually being there, um, that there's something to be said for that. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, I haven't been on Twitch as much. I haven't been on it in a little bit actually, just because I've just been focusing on producing, also moving. Right, that's that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, it is cool when people jump on there and show what they're doing production wise. Like it is a really good tool for going out there, and you have seen some people like build communities from it, which is really cool. Um, it But like everything, you have to keep doing something different to keep people interested. So it'll be interesting to see if that keeps evolving. Ultimately, live music is always going to be like the biggest thing. Social media presence is really important. Like you have to keep people engaged. Like it kind of goes to the business side. Like if a promoter looks at your page and not many people are interested on what you're doing, or you're not putting enough out there to where people will be interested. Like unless you're a huge name, like they're not going to see like, oh, this guy's up and coming or whatever. That's probably really important, especially for like newer names that aren't as established. So, but still, ultimately, like if you put out good music, eventually it gets noticed. You'll see your Spotify listeners go up. You'll see SoundCloud go up, and other people will be playing your music. It does come back around if the music is good. And so that's one big thing that I've noticed. And there's one thing that I got told early on in my music career is that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and you have to keep pushing forward even when things seem down. It doesn't matter if you think nobody's paying attention to you. That is, you should still be working hard. And then eventually, when you catch that spotlight again, you're already ready because readiness is luck meets opportunity. And I love that saying, just because like if you get your opportunity and you're not ready, that's just a wasted opportunity. And you can call it luck for sure, but you're kind of building your own luck that way by being ready. So
Yeah. Well, let's get a little bit to the production because you do have a track coming out soon. So let's get into that and talk about how exciting that is because it's a collaboration, right?
yeah, with my buddy David from Liverpool, Amos and Riot Night, we are calling it "Falling Into Place." It's been getting played out as an ID from Ali and Fila, and I've been testing it out too at gigs. We've made like one or two tracks since COVID together, and um, they were good, but they weren't really strong. This one, we're just like we love it. Like we're so proud of this track. It is uplifting, but it's a little bit different for both of us as far as like the style, like as far as like the bass line, the rhythm, like the melody structure. It's got the I'll say custom Amos and Riot Night piano in there, so he's really good at that. So we made sure we added that. It's got some cool acid lines. Like it's something we're both really proud of. And yeah, it's coming out October 23rd on Future Sound of Egypt. I got some videos of me playing it, of Ali and Fila when he first tested it out at Concourse Project in Austin. Um,
Wow.
he didn't tell me he was going to play it. He always does that. I'll send him something and I'll be there, and then next thing you know, my track's on, and I'm like, oh man, I better get a video. It's just funny, but it's all fun. And then with music, I've been working on expanding my sound a little bit. Like I want to do a little bit more tech. And so I've been working on a few projects with that, and working on a few vocal tunes. One is with one of the biggest vocalists in trance. I won't say who yet, but it's
Ooh.
probably the most proud I've been of any record I've written. And
Wow.
that track, I wrote it as an acoustic first before I sent it over. And I have a trance version, like a typical 138. I may make another version of it too. I've been having so much fun with this. but this is
That's
like,
exciting.
yeah, it's going to be big. Anyone I've shown any the close circle of people that I've shown it to are just like, wow. So um, it's it's something this I'm really proud of it. I can't say that enough, and I'm really excited to share it. You probably won't see it until 2024, but uh, working on music. I should have more music on subculture, on regenerate, the typical. I feel like these are like the three typical labels that I release on that really push my sound. Uh, and I am working on something for Dream State that's not confirmed yet, but they've been wanting something from me for a bit, and that's actually kind of been where I'm experimenting with like more of a techie, like tech trance vibe, but trying to find my swing to it. You know what I mean? I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. Um, but at the same time, it's fun to try something different than what I typically do. You don't want to always sound the same, but you also want to find that balance to where if someone hears something you make, they're like, "Oh, that's Niko," or that's Marcus, or whoever. Right? You hear it, you're
Yeah.
like so that's kind of like been a fun task. Eventually, I'll put music out under my NZ alias. I'm getting pretty close with that. It's taken me a little bit longer just because I've been taking a lot of time to get that progressive sound down. Um, you know, Ali and Fila told me, his Das Pharaoh project took him a couple of years to really get it to where he wanted it to be. And I'm close. I feel like it's actually almost been a couple of years too, right? When, it's funny because he says that, and I'm like, all right, let me take my time. But, you want to get something right. You want to make something special. You don't just want to put out whatever. Sometimes you finish a track, you shelf it, and come back to it and you realize, oh wow, I can make this better with all that I've learned in the past 6 months. Or you think of an idea that you you didn't think of before because you're listening to it all the time and you get tunnel vision. So if you're not sure what you're doing with the track, one piece of good advice I got was just shelve it, come back to it later, and there's nothing wrong with that. And just when it flows, it flows. You'll know. So
Good advice. I in the last episode with Redub that I don't know when people are going to be listening to this. It's already been released. We talked about in production how you can get kind of like what they call writer's block, but you just kind of alluded to it is like shelve it and come back to it. But myself, a lot of people may or may not know, I've been dabbling in the last year or so myself in producing, just learning
nice.
Ableton and kind of seeing what happens with a producing partner. And coming from a musical background, so because I played saxophone for like 17 years,
Nice. I
um,
played it too. Not that long though.
but I haven't played it as consistently as when I was in band and marching band and the whole
Mhm.
thing. But having that music theory mindset first, it's hard to. Well, it's been hard for me. The learning curve has been just learning Ableton
Yeah.
and understanding. So, did you have that now that I know that you come from those beginnings as well, or did you find like help from other producers or any of the collaborations you've been doing? Was that an easier way to get into that mindset? Because there's this debate whether people should learn theory before producing, or there's a lot of producers that don't know theory that are amazing. So it's kind of that old age debate.
Yeah, I guess the thing is like, I played saxophone from like fifth grade to like end of high school. So I did learn like music theory then, and I kind of felt like I tossed a lot of it out the window when I started producing music, just because I was trying to get down Logic. Before I used Reason for like a year or two, and just it was not for me. But I know Ableton too. I think the thing is like you can apply the music theory that you know, but first before you want to get down these creative ideas, you need to make sure, well, let me take that back. You can get down these ideas, but if you're trying to make them sound as good as you can, you want to make sure that your sounds in your DAW are as good as possible. And a lot of times, what people do is they will try to do too much. One thing that I learned from Sean Tyas was getting the sound right from the synth itself at the start. And when I was first making music, like first producing, I didn't really have anybody to show me anything. And then eventually I started learning from other producers. I learned from James Diamond, Sean Tyas, Activa, and all those guys have showed me um, it's funny. They didn't have to show me too much, but enough to where it was like, wow, something clicked. Now, granted, sometimes I did take hours with them to learn some things. Like Sean Tyas had classes. Activa is really good in Logic, so kind of seeing how he does stuff in Logic was really beneficial for me. Um, if you're going to learn from people, that's great. Like there should be nothing wrong with that at all, and it's only going to help you grow as a musician and a producer. Now, this was mainly the technical stuff. So, and one thing that you learn is like less is more. You shouldn't need to add all these extra plugins onto your lead to make it sound better. It should be already sounding good, and you just need like a. It's almost like you're like sprinkling like a little like pepper or salt on it, just to give it a little bit more kick, kind of thing. Like that's really what like smaller plugins like should do, but you should never be adding a lot. So again, less is more. If your sound is already good, and also another piece of advice that I got early on from just a friend of mine was that if something's not working, don't spend all this time trying to make it work. Move on. If your kick drum sucks, stop trying to make it better. Just get another kick drum. Like just make your life as simple as possible so you can keep moving forward. If your snare sucks, don't try to EQ it and make it better. I mean, if it does make it a lot better, sure, but you shouldn't have to do some like crazy EQ on it to make it better. If it's not good, move on. If you're making a kick drum and you're trying to like you use the top end of a kick with the low end of another kick and it's not working, just scrap it. Like you have to be able to move on. Don't spend too much time trying to get the little things right. Make your path to success as easy as possible. Then from there, you're going to be more creative. And it you can use a lot. There is music theory that I use now that I know works for trance. So that's really kind of what it's taken me a while to figure that out. And a lot of that has to do like studying trance melodies and just it takes a lot of trial and error too. So it you just want to get your sounds right from the start. Then really like there's a less chance of it sounding bad. So even though you have a good idea and it sounds bad because like the sounds aren't good, that's it's a balance, right? Like you want to have some music knowledge. Some people can do it all by ear, but um, it's probably a little bit unrealistic. There's a balance, right? But like your sound design and your melodies are two different parts of what you write, right? So, um, but yeah, just finding the right sounds and not overdoing it is like probably like the biggest thing. Sometimes less is more. Most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is my own like imposter syndrome because I respect the music and production so much that I think the biggest learning curve has been like, how do I not overthink a melody or a sound?
Oh, it's a trap. You can't. I know. I
Yeah.
say this, but I mean, like, ultimately, I've been there so many times, right? So, but you also got to like, but here's the thing. Like, I've talked to, a lot of these heavy hitter producers, and like I was like, was it last year? Was it last year? I think it was last year at EDC. I was hanging out with John O'Callahan, and he was saying like he writes like a track like pretty like I forget if it's like a track a week or something like that, like to where like, he'll come up with an idea and it's just like, he's like, man, it like sucks. And it's just like he moves on and like he'll make another one. Like, first of all, this is John O'Callahan.
Yeah.
If he's making ideas that don't pan out, if this guy, you're right, who's a legend, who's one of the most talented trance producers, like period, still makes stuff that is just like he's not happy with, and he's not just being picky. It's just like, man, it just doesn't work. Like it, you can't get down on yourself for something not sounding good. You just got to know when to move on and move forward. Not all your tracks that you write are going to be good. It's just the moral of the story. Like most people, that's not how it works. I guarantee you, any producer out there will have a bunch of things that they shelf or they're just going to toss just because like it just doesn't pan out. But you have to keep producing. That's the key. Like if it doesn't, don't get in your head about it. Everyone, it happens to everyone, and you'll soon realize that too. And I think that's what helped me is like, okay, wait a minute, all these guys are I'm going through the same thing that these guys are. You know what I mean? And so I just got to keep pushing forward. So just make sure your energy is positive and just keep doing your best, and things will work out. But I remember when speaking of like Ruby Sky memories, we had it was Ruben Durand and Thomas Heredia, and I played an opening set for them or before them. And Ruben and I were talking afterwards. He's like, "Man, like I loved your set. Like, do you produce music?" And this was like, was this 2012 or something like that? So like I'd only been producing for like a short time at that point. Um, and I'm like, yeah, well, I really like the dark, cold harbor sound, but also, I do like, progressive for opening and like, I'm a huge, uplifting guy. He's like, all right, you got to pick one, focus on one. He's like, I get it. He's like, but you're only going to make leaps if you focus on one. Pick the one that you're most passionate about. Focus on that. Sure, you can expand later, kind of thing, but you want something that you can get good at first, and you put all your focus and energy to that, and things will work out. And then I did that. Got my first track signed to FSOE with my friend Mitka, and then I've been putting out music on FSOE for like I don't remember when the first release was, probably 2014, 15, something like that. Whenever it was like a year or two before FSOE 400. So whenever that was, but like that's something that is just, especially when you're learning, you want to stick to one thing first. Stick to the one, get it down, expand later. Now, of course, like if you're just having fun and you want to try something different, like I get it, but you really should have just one focus at first, one sound, one direction, get that down. It's just like people buy a whole bunch of different synthesizers and they're like, oh, you should have Silent, you should have Spire, you should have this, you should have that, and have all these. Get two. Get those down. Of course, you have your drum samples and all that, of course, right? Like, but I mean, because your synths are going to be like your melody, your bass, your pads. Get two. Focus on those. Get those two down. You have those two synths down. One, your sound is going to be consistent because it's coming from those two, but also you're going to get really good at those synths because those are the only two that you're using. You're not trying to learn four or five at the same time. So it's just a matter of, and like, I'm guilty of this. That's a piece of advice that I got from like Ali and Fila just like a year ago, kind of thing. So I mean, like
Yeah.
you like learn these things and it makes sense. You want to walk before you run. You gotta, don't try to do too much. Just get down what you can get down first and expand from there.
Cool. Well, I mean, we could talk for hours, but
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
the people out
I'll
listening,
show you some stuff too since you're in the area. We'll figure
yeah,
we'll have a session for sure.
awesome, great. So, can you remind people when they can pick up your track and where you are on social media?
Yeah. So was it? Are we still
No,
going?
you're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
So October 23rd on Future Sound of Egypt, my track with Amos and Riot Night falling into place. That's Going to be on all your streaming platforms, on Beatport, all that good stuff. You can find me on Spotify. I have a Niko Zografos Essentials playlist where you can find all of my official productions and remixes. SoundCloud.com/ Niko Zografos for like a lot of DJ sets. I have my music on there too. Um, Instagram is just Niko Zografos, and then obviously, Facebook. You can find me Niko Zografos Music, and Twitter. Just search my name. I'm all over, but I'm on Apple Music as well. So, but mainly my live sets are mainly on SoundCloud, and then I always update my Spotify playlist with my latest music that's coming out, and it has all my tracks on there.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll try to put a lot of these links in the episode description for people to check out as well.
Sweet.
Well, thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. We might have to do another part to go down even more topics.
Yeah.
But, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, totally. And if once I'm a little bit more settled, if you're trying to have a production session, I definitely got you. So
Thank you.
I'm trying to get Morgan in here, and Nikki.
Yeah, they've all been on the podcast too. So.
Yeah, so I'm trying to connect with everyone in Phoenix Trans family, and then definitely trying to figure out when I can play out here too. That'll be fun to figure out.
Definitely. All right. Well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, have a good one. Take care.